Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, December 11th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Cotton Bowl game in 20 days, the game against Michigan in 352 days. We're joined today by our X's and O's guru, Ross Fulton. And when Ross is on the show, we're sponsored by Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, we're going to be talking about the offense against Indiana, and we're breaking things down a little bit differently than we do in a typical week. Normally, we do one show on the offense, one show on the defense. This week, we're doing one show on the red zone offense. We'll do a show on the non-red zone offense next, and then we'll get to the defense next week. No one's concerned about the defense right now. Everyone's concerned about the red zone offense. We hear you. We get it. We're just going to do a whole show on that. And Ross, we are going to start with everyone's favorite. They got three tight ends on the field, and one of them's kind of lined up as a fullback, so we can call it 22, we can call it 13, however you want to talk about it. I formation, but that means you've got either Jeremiah Smith or Carnell Tate not on the field if you're in 13. So this is sort of everyone's hot topic of the week, and we're going to start with one right here where it does not work at all.
Yeah, I want to start with the close-up view to get kind of into what Indiana was doing and why this was not working. But big picture, right? Like this is not a new issue in terms of red zone challenges for Ohio State this season. And as we talked about, like big picture, 30,000-foot view, like you get in these condensed areas, and it's just the defense always outnumbers the offense. And if your quarterback is not a run threat, now they've outnumbered you by two, right? Because like here we're under center, and once Julian Sain hands that football off, unless you're using play action or something like that, you now have two unblocked defenders, the ball carrier's counterpart and the quarterback's counterpart. So the defense can always outnumber. So I think I bet if you went back and looked at Ryan Day's tenure, the seasons where there tend to be concerns about the red zone efficiency tend to be seasons where they do not have a run threat at quarterback. It's pretty correlated. So, one way to deal with that is to get in these heavy personnel packages. I think they have tried and tried and tried this, obviously, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir to people listening to this that it is it has not been particularly effective. And in fact, its effectiveness is going down because Indiana probably gave a blueprint to how to deal with this. But so, Day talked about on Sunday after watching the film that their idea was to get heavy in the red zone and run vertically. And by vertically, I think, we're thinking power and counter gap runs to get you downhill. In theory, where they were probably coming from is we talked about before the game. Indiana's the defensive line, they like to stunt and move a lot, so they are undersized, and so they probably get bodies in there and move them out of the way. The problem was Indiana throughout the game, and I'll show you this, in the non-red zone part two, but particularly down here, they condensed their defensive line down, and so by that I mean like if you look at they're bringing everyone inside the tackle box if you're watching. So like, defensive number 8, for instance, for Indiana here, we're going to run Ohio State's going to run power to their left side, or right from the camera angle. Normally you would have a 3 technique between the guard and the tackle, and then that defensive end would be outside the tight end. He bumps down, they walk up the Sam linebacker. And so now you've made things difficult, and they're going to move a lot. And so Ohio State, they've had these issues throughout the year with gap runs. We've showed them in different contexts of when teams move or they are not in the alignment how they would have drawn it up on the chalkboard, or I guess that no one uses chalkboards anymore, but you get the point. They really struggle identifying the blockers, right? And so, if you run this through, you want to kick out to the outside of the tight end. But so because of that, I'm sure we've got, freshman Nate Roberts at fullback. He is a tight end. He does not do this very much. It has not been effective this year. You're going to get Will Kazmarek blocking down on the defensive end. And so what Nate Roberts needs to do is recognize that he needs to move his path outside. He needs to block 46, the Sam linebacker. He kicks out the Sam. Then Tegra Shabola can pull around outside. Part of this is on Kazmarek too. Like the tight ends, they need to drive and move their feet. Like part of the issue beyond the strategy of multiple tight ends is like if you're going to put multiple tight ends out there, you would like them to be better blockers than what they've shown for Ohio State. Now, Kazmarek is a good blocker. He had his challenges, I think, in this game, as they all did. Indiana has a good defense. You have to give them credit, and they were prepared to play. They had scouted Ohio State very well. They were, played a very high. They executed at a high level. But anyway, so you'd like to block that down. Then you can pull around, and at least you have a hat on a hat. And so what happens is they end up with two guys blocking the defensive end. You have the Sam then who can force the football back inside. And this is the other issue Ohio State had throughout the game with these gap runs is they could never get off double teams to the backside linebacker. The Will linebacker here flows hard over the top, and that he's sitting in the hole. That just kills gap run plays, right? In theory, you would like Austin Saravelt at left tackle to come off for 21. They never get there. And so, when we go tomorrow or the next show, when we talk about the things that Ohio State did, it did not do like in the rest of the field. Like, they really needed to bootleg, especially when you're under center more, give them reverses, give something to constrain the backside of the defense because they were just flowing so hard over the top. But so all these things, all these factors came to bear, and why, there were definitely like successful run plays. It wasn't like, stone throughout, but like they're just not set up for success here because like even if you block this well, it's hard to get off to 21. And oh, by the way, like Indiana's backside defenders also coming hard off the edge unblocked because again, they're just like not respecting saying the bootleg threat.
All right, our next one is there. Once again, this is going to be one that's probably sort of designed to get people annoyed again, and they're in 13 personnel, so check. And they're going to run the ball between the tackles, which, I'm sure is going to irritate people. But this is one where I don't know if they showed this on the broadcast, but man, just watch Jeremiah Smith on the wide angle. Look at how much space he has to operate, and the play is obviously not going there, but it's hard to look at this with Jeremiah Smith and the amount of space he's got and think, not think like, man, there's some opportunity out there.
Yeah, and before I even get there, again, like you can see Indiana's strategy. So like particularly from the behind the offensive line view, like Ohio State's at the 10-yard line, and Indiana is in a low goal line 6-4 defense base. So they have their 4 defensive linemen all inside the 2 offensive tackles for Ohio State. So every gap is clogged. Again, Indiana's got 10 guys inside the box. So Ohio State match goes 13. You get, 8 blockers. Indiana's got 10 there, right? And so, but in doing that, they have left Jeremiah Smith just completely one-on-one on an island with the cornerback. And this happened twice in the game. And I think even live, Joel Klatt's like, there's so much space for Jeremiah Smith. This like all game, this like glance route or bang eight, if you want to call it, where he would, a skinny post to the end zone is just wide open with the single coverage. This gets into like a bigger strategy call. I don't know whether Ohio State, gives Sane the option to audible or gives him 2 plays at the line of scrimmage. But like going forward, this has to be an automatic check, and they have to throw this ball to Jeremiah Smith, or else you're just letting Indiana scheme-wise win. I mean, you could block this perfectly, and they're still going to have extra defenders in the box because they outnumber you. So, you get the pull and kick from Montgomery. Claire comes around, but the backside, defensive end basically just closes down hard on the play because again, there's no respect for a run threat or read threat here. And so it's just impossible for Ohio State to block everyone here. And, again, it's one thing when you get these sort of goal line looks. If they're running this at the 2-yard line, that's one thing. But again, when you're like at the 10-yard line and you're running counter into a 6-4, you're going to maybe gain 2 yards. And then that's what kept happening to them. They kept putting themselves behind schedule in the low red zone. And that just is really difficult to overcome.
The next one, this is another one. I feel like I've been banging the drum for this all year, and I keep waiting for someone to tell me, "No, you idiot! Here's why that can't. Here's why that doesn't actually work." And I keep not really getting an answer on that. So this is one where they are going to throw it to Jeremiah Smith, and it feels to me like if you've got single coverage on Jeremiah Smith, you look at where the corner's playing, and if he's playing with outside leverage, you throw the slant, and if he's playing with inside leverage, you throw the fade. And I'm sure that is a gross oversimplification here, but you've got the corner playing really strong outside leverage, so it feels like if there's a slant here, this feels like it should be 6 points. So is there a reason that it is not as simple as I'm making it out to be here?
It seems, again, Indiana at Ohio State scouted really well, and they obviously knew that in this situation, Ohio State, for whatever reason, has really not liked throwing the football over the middle of the field in these low red zone, in the low red zone area, because they just feel completely comfortable putting their corner. I've almost never seen that much outside leverage. Like that's an easy, again, throw over the middle of the field. Yeah, it's the case here. It was the case on the 3rd and 1 where they did the sprint out left, where there was just a lot of leverage on Jeremiah Smith on an outbreaking route. I don't know what the cause of this is. We could all speculate. I wondered whether they're concerned in this compressed area with Sayan's height or lack thereof about the ball getting tipped if he throws it over the middle. But then again, they threw that knife route to Brandon Inniss against Michigan in the end zone last week. So whatever the reason has been, like this needs to change. You can't let yourself be this predictable that you're going to have a cornerback. I want to demonstrate it. Like literally, line. It's like if you were playing someone in basketball and you knew they could only dribble with their right hand, and you stand like you're literally like this on their side to force them to go left. I mean, that's basically what they're doing. So we can get into sort of like what should they do in the red zone going forward, but like putting aside like personnel choices, like take what the defense is giving you here.
And this next one is, and we can get into the personnel choices here, where this is another 13 personnel, which means Carnell Tate is not on the field. Jeremiah Smith is on the field, and you can sort of start to see, if you have one guy on Jeremiah Smith, then there's probably a throw there. This is one where they've kind of dedicated two guys to Jeremiah Smith, which really sort of helps even out the numbers and maybe open some stuff up for Bo Jackson in the run game. And this is a heck of a run by Bo Jackson as well. He deserves a lot of credit because made the most out of this play.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is the thing with all this use of 13, right? And like you put 13 with with Smith, and your concept is that the defense has to devote two bodies to Jeremiah Smith, and so that should then help with the run game. And so you're getting a numbers advantage in the box. The problem with like the last snap we showed again is the defense isn't respecting it. So in that situation, as we said, like they should have two plays ready to go, or Sand should be able to automatically check one step throw. Here, maybe because it's like as opposed to being like at the 5-yard line, Ohio State's more like at the 18. Indiana is more worried about that space, and so they, as you said, like they're playing more of a cover 2 look or cover 4. The safety is respecting that inside threat from Smith. So in that situation, then you can run it because you have much better numbers, right? And so this is, again, like talking about vertical runs. These are all the same. We're all power counter down here, right? I think they maybe ran stretch once in the red zone. Other than that, it was all gap scheme. This one, like technique-wise, they also block it correctly. So like as opposed to that first one I showed, so you can see that really behind the line of scrimmage. They have the defensive end for Indiana, again, like in that compressed look. Kazmarek blocks down on him this time. Bennett Christian's at fullback. He correctly kicks out the Sam linebacker. Gabe Van Sickle pulls around. As you said, this is a nice cutback by Bo Jackson here to get positive yardage. It's helped by the fact that this is maybe like the one time that Ohio State did get to the backside linebacker when Austin Cerebell gets to Hardy, blocks him, which gives the opportunity for a cutback. But just big picture, again, it's like if you're going to get in 13 and use Smith to try to like have that gravitational pull, like at a minimum, make sure he has that gravitational pull before you run it. And that you just wonder, like, saying for as well as he's played for most of the year, like just being a redshirt freshman, how much, latitude they give him, whether it's audible or, just making two play calls in the huddle and giving him that freedom to do it. If he sees that, single coverage with no safety help.
This next one, we don't normally this is just Ross sends me the plays and we just talk about the plays Ross sent me. This is one that I specifically requested because this is one where I'm on the field. I don't have a great view of anything. And this is one that I looked at on the field through a camera lens and went, well, I can tell exactly what's happening here. And Ohio State actually had the right, had the 12 personnel out there. So you have Smith and Tate out there. And you can see the phrase Ross just used, the gravitational pull of those guys. There are four defenders over the two wide receivers, and one of them ends up coming off the edge. But you've got them completely out of whack in terms of alignment, and that opens up the whole rest of the field. And this very nearly turns into a touchdown for Bo Jackson. And I just look at this, and between you can throw it to them, but this is to me a great example of why you'd love to be in 12 personnel, because if you can pull multiple defenders, you can even out numbers, maybe even take an advantage in terms of numbers if you can get enough guys out of the box and clear things up for the run game.
Yeah, and so I think like with 12 especially, like just given we've talked about the personnel of this Ohio State team, like, I think Ohio State is so thin at wide receiver. Like, I think Brandon Inniss, has his moments. He's contributed. I do think he's improved, but like, I get why they want to play a lot of 12, especially when Max Clare is probably your third best receiving threat. But 12 is a lot different than 13 or 14, as we're seeing here. I mean, the other thing about this, like, just in terms of the choice for this game, in terms of the heavy tight ends, Indiana wants to play three linebackers. So, you're letting them do what they prefer to do. So like all game, you saw this, like they had the Sam linebacker here to the field. He comes off the edge and then they slant to the boundary, or a lot of times they're slanting towards the tight end or looping. You would really like to see them, like especially like here when you got twins and it's Tate and Smith, like attacking those linebackers in coverage. Again, probably not enough of that, but by being in the gun here, at least in gun 12, right, they have to respect the RPO threat as well. Again, like saying has not been a run threat. We could get into, this is a great example. If you watch it slow, like saying keeping the ball once or twice on a zone read would really be effective, particularly in the red zone. I mean, he's small. I get, you don't want to get him hit. He could dive and, you still accomplish the goal or slide. But like just by forcing, with the RPO, they have an RPO here on of a hitch and a fade. Indiana has 3/2, as you said. They have to cover it and cover 6. So they got 2 to the boundary, 4 to the field. But yeah, it's just a numbers game, right? Like Ohio State then is able to block this up. You get the kick out, you get the pull around. I would have liked to seen, you still have that pressure off the edge, as I said, that you'd like to be able to deal with. That sort of trips Jackson up, but for that, like you'd like to see him actually get to the other side of Kazmarek, like get to his butt as opposed to cutting in. Hardy is able to sort of trip him, fingernail tackle him. That's a touchdown. Otherwise, if he gets past there, I know that Ryan Day sort of talked about a continued desire again. Like in this game, there were several runs where the running backs, and that's principally Jackson in this game, were 5 to 6 yards on the field and one-on-one with a linebacker, a safety, and Indiana was able to get him down. And you'd like to see a little bit more again, like still get more explosiveness out of the run game. But I think this sort of shows, taking Smith and or Tate off the field is just, I think there's limited whatever value there is, and I take seriously that they're coming back from injury. I mean, Tate in particular, like there's plays they're running 40 yards down the field. They have no receivers. Like they don't have guys they can sub in. Like getting Quincy Porter back would probably help. So like I do get that, like sometimes you just have to do it to give them a breather. But like whatever value they've been getting out of the 13 personnel packages has, like, I think they've gone way overboard. And you want to force teams, again, if like Sands not going to run, there's no reason you can't run these RPOs in the red zone like you do the rest of the field, in my opinion.
The next one we're going to look at is actually 11 personnel. So have we talked about, I don't think we haven't talked about this on this show. Just we'll run through the numbers real quick, what they mean when we say 11 personnel. It is running backs on the field is the first number. So one running back. The second number is tight ends on the field. So 11 personnel is one running back, one tight end. And then the implied number is the other three are wide receivers. So 13 personnel is one running back, three tight ends, and then one wide receiver. You can kind of do the math from there. So this is 11 personnel. So you got one running back, one tight end, three wide receivers here. And this is one where you sort of see why you might want another tight end, because you get some pressure off the edge that if you watch, it's like there's probably something there with Jeremiah Smith on this one, but then the pressure off the edge kind of ruins the whole thing.
Yeah, so this is a good, I guess let's start from like the 30,000 foot view again. Like if you're not going to get heavy and you don't have a quarterback run threat, like you got to be able to throw it down here, right? Like if you want to spread it out and do it, you got to be able to execute. This is third down, so they didn't really have a choice. Indiana, again, like they were very well prepared for this game. They had a bye. They played Purdue. Like they were ready to go. And so, they attacked Ohio State's protections here because Ohio State's going to half slide this, and Indiana's going to bring. So Ohio State's half sliding the field and big on big of the boundary. The running back has to help to the big on big side to the right. And so, you just kept getting these sim pressures from Indiana or creepers. Everyone's walking up, they're dropping out. They're actually playing a Tampa 2. But the pressure comes off the edge. Saravelt, they slant inside of him. He has to pass out into Montgomery and get out to the Sam linebacker, and he's too late in doing it. Now, I do think I'll get into this on our next show. This is not Julian Saint's best game. And I think that after that interception and some of the pressure and the looks he was getting, I do not think he was ever comfortable, because I personally think this is one, like, especially if you're down here, they have a 6-man protection. Like, I think he should be looking to throw hot. Like, I don't think that Sam linebacker just kept coming off the edge over and over again. Like, I think you should be prepared because, as you said, like, that knife route from Jeremiah Smith is open for a touchdown. I don't think he needs to bail the pocket yet. He is looking to Carnell Tate on this cover 2 side on this curl route. I also think that's open if he stays in there. CJ Donaldson is a really good pass protector. Like he picks this up. Hensman gets beat, but Donaldson picks it up. Like, I think there's time to stay. And so, again, like if your quarterback, if he's not to sound like a broken record, but like if he's not going to be a run threat down there, like you have to be precise. And, it was not his best game in a lot of ways. I thought he did improve as the game went on, but we'll talk about some of the other, but it's, he's got to be prepared to sort of stay in there and hit throws in this condensed area, because people will tend to bring pressure down here when you have to throw.
And the last one we're going to look at, they're actually in 14 personnel. So we just talked about that. It's going to be 4 tight ends on the field. So you have no wide receivers on the field. You have 4 tight ends. This is the play that went to Bennett Christian. It was the play right before the missed field goal right at the end. This was the third down play down there in the red zone. But you mentioned this before we started recording. That's probably not where the ball was necessarily designed to go. And there was actually someone open that probably could have picked up that first down.
Yeah, it's funny because on Sunday I was watching the Bears-Packers game, and the Bears ran the identical play, and Caleb Williams did the identical thing, which is not throw it in the flat for the first down, and instead try to throw it in the end zone, and they lost too. But this is a designed, rollout to hit the back in the flat. It's basically like the spider Y banana concept that John Gruden loved to talk about, except you're doing it with the tailback, and so you're either they're faking this fullback dive. And in my opinion, he has Jackson the flat if he throws it on time. Like, get it there now. All he needs is 1 yard. For all we talked about the heavy personnel packages, like they sold out twice. Drive before this, they tried the sprint out to Jeremiah Smith. This drive, they tried to throw it again on 3rd and 1. And so, like, I think he has Jackson there. He also probably has Bennett Christian if he throws it in time. Again, he's late. He just wasn't quite seeing the field and like being on time this game like he has been this season. But one thing that this clip also kind of one thought I have in terms of going forward, I would like to see them put Donaldson at fullback, particularly if they're not going to use him as a short yardage back. We didn't see him like get really down to like the low red zone, like inside the 2 or 3 yard line, but it was pretty much all Bo Jackson in these red zone situations. Like, it just gives you some versatility. Like, they tried to hand it to Nate Roberts on this play. It did not work. He's a tight end. Like, you can run, you can get a little misdirection going with using Donaldson with having another threat. You can put him in the flat. Like, he's a pass catcher, right? So even like within like a heavier personnel look, I think that gives you a little bit more flexibility. But, I personally think that this was a well-designed play and it just wasn't quite executed. Putting aside, but that does, all that said, that doesn't mean that I think that they should be in 13 or 14 personnel as much as they are. I do not think that. I'd rather see them like run their offense down here. But, it wasn't for like, ironically, it was not like they were banging their head against the wall in these short yardage situations all the time.
Well, you mentioned the potential personnel change of C.J. Donaldson maybe going in as in that fullback role for Nate Roberts. The other thing that I know that I've seen people talking about is Lincoln Kienholz. And, the Kienholz package, I think you will get a wide variety of opinions on that. But you've now seen a couple times in the last couple games where you're trying to do the tush push Philly, whatever the Philly special, not that Philly special, the Philadelphia tush push kind of play. And Julian Sayin is that's not necessarily Julian Sayin's strength. So is that something where if you're going to do that, is that something where you put the bigger, more physical quarterback in there? Is that something that would be beneficial, or does that just make it very obvious what you're going to do and make it harder to actually do it?
I think it actually may make it less obvious. I mean, there's things you can do, right? You can put them both on the field at the same time, and you can motion Sayin out and bring Kienholz in at the last second. I think the bigger question then too is like, do you want to use more of like the shotgun run read package that we've seen them do a couple of times with Kienholz in the low red zone? We saw them do it in the late in the season against Rutgers when Tate and Smith were both out. Day on Sunday sort of said like, well, obviously after things failed, like, maybe we should have gone to that. I do think there is a question of, again, I think that they had a sense that Sayin wasn't quite on his game for much of the game. Like, you saw that in the second half with some like the bootlegs, like they give him some easier throws. Like, I think in those situations, maybe it makes sense to change it up and use Kienholz, especially like with those condensed sets. It would have been nice to like run, some quarterback run read concepts like, lead outside zone, or even like a power read or bash that gets the ball outside those like defensive ends really pinching inside. So I think it's going to have to be something that they keep in the toolkit going forward. My first step would be giving them, as I said, more at least 12 personnel, more keeping Smith and Tate on the field, more shotgun where you're running RPOs, or more bootlegging to them, keep them as threats. But then I think, short of that, I think also maybe, especially like in like real short yardage, like 3rd and 1 like this, maybe using Kienholz, especially if you're, like those concepts they were using in those 3rd and 1s were obviously like pass plays, but not like, a little gadgety, I hate, for lack of a better term. And so maybe you use Kienholz to mix it up a little bit in those 3rd and 1 situations.
All right, so there you go. There is your look at the Ohio State performance in the red zone against Indiana. It can only get better from here. We're going to be talking about the rest of the offense a little later on in the week, and then, of course, going to get a defensive show or two with Ross as well. We'll get to that. I know that just was not the hot topic after the game, so we will get to all of that stuff, and then we'll probably do a little bit of look ahead as well at what to expect sort of moving forward for the Buckeyes. And when we have Ross back on the show, we will once again be sponsored by Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.